we're not everyone. And it's the 26th of September, and we'll discuss the project and we'll have a discussion on character design. In the discussion of the project, I will focus on what we have done so that it's a kind of progress update. And then, of course, move into what needs to be done based on where we are. Okay, so if you can hear me, let me know. David? Okay. So let me start then with a summary because you're here. I know you missed the last one. So I'll just review what we covered last time, and I'll also tell you the activities so you have a sense of what we are supposed to be doing and also what we have started doing. And then once I'm done with that, I'll explain what we need to do next. So generally, the whole idea is to produce an animation based on the Ecotales concept, which we have gone through together. And it's the same concept we started off with, which is on, you could say, environmental conservation or environmental preservation. That's the main concept. And it's sponsored by a trust that are interested in preserving the environment by preventing littering in townscapes, but also in rural areas or rural urban areas. They see littering as potentially a climate change, or let's say a problem in climate change proportions. That's how they see it. And they feel that it can be controlled by our behavior, and that means it can be controlled through a transformation of behavior. And they also believe it can happen generationally. It can't necessarily come about now because it has to be en masse. It has to be a widespread in the sense of behavioral change. And that behavioral change is difficult to achieve with older folks. So they want to see if they can at least contribute to achieving generational change and bring up a generation that is aware of the connection between our survival, our livelihoods, and the environment preservation. That's the whole idea. So they're looking at it positively. We started this and we conceived what we suggested to the client was a transmedia project. And by transmedia, we said we're looking at the application, you could say, of visual stories across different channels and different media. So the client has accepted the idea and felt that it's the way not only to achieve widespread appeal, but also the way to scale the project. And if we can, in many ways, hit a break-even number of people, then the impact can in itself gather legs and start to grow on its own. This would be ideal. So the client feels that the approach we're taking is relevant or at least targeted to the audience that they'd like to target. So who is their audience? The audience are Generation Alpha. And because Generation Alpha right now at the highest age are 12 years going on 13, they're still quite young. Although that's a good time to get them, they're very impressionable. So the idea is to target Generation Z, who influence Generation Alpha in many ways as older brothers or older sisters, but they're influencing or having this influencing effect on Generation Alpha. So it's a two-pronged approach. While they're targeting Generation Alpha, they are looking at Generation Z as the main influencers. So in some ways, we treat Generation Z as our primary and Generation Alpha as our secondary in some ways. So these stories are crafted to at least bring about measurable transformation within the primary consumer, Generation Z. And then from there, we can also measure the impact it has on the secondary consumer. That's Generation Alpha. Now, uniquely, the direct targeting of the message is not to Generation Millennial or Generation X, for that matter. Generation X is uniquely placed as parents of Generation Z. and generation millennial, you could say, are uniquely placed as parents of generation alpha. So in some ways, we include them in the storyline, but they would be tertiary level in some ways. We're not really targeting them, but we have to take them into account because of the, you can say, cross-generational rules that would affect actually reaching our audience. If, for example, parents decide, like generation millennial, decide that this information we're giving is not suitable for their kids to watch, then they will cut them off. And in Kenya, or yeah, Kenya, let's say, that age at which these kids are cut off is quite old if you consider. I mean, parents would try to regulate children up to the age of 18, as long as they're staying in their house. So it's not like in some countries, but here there's a lot of regulatory or regulation coming from parents. So we have to take that into account. In some ways, we can't ignore it. And that means our messaging has to be in many ways suitable to not only parents, but parents must see it as good for their children. That kind of thinking has to be infused in what we're doing. So there's a moral approach in some ways that makes it ethical on one hand and acceptable then to parents, generation millennial most likely, but also generation X because they influence generation Z. Although generation Z is not so much under the influence of parents because they're already young adults, at least the main influencers. They're already young adults, so they've left the house maybe as students. So it's not as it would be for the generation alpha. But that's the nature of our persona. And we have to understand our persona in this kind of way in order for us to be targeted in our messaging. Now, the client has accepted that we should use this two-pronged approach where we target generation X and as the primary and generation, let's say, alpha as the secondary. Now, the other thing is that the problem which the client is isolating as needing to be addressed is behavioral change. But they see it in two ways. They see the problem in two ways. That people are not educated sufficiently to understand that littering is actually dangerous for our livelihoods. So that's one problem. The second problem is that people are not, you can say, activist enough to get involved in, you could say, sending the message to others that they should not litter the environment. So they see the education of people as being the first thing that needs to happen so that people know about it. And then the, you can say, mobilizing of people so that they can go out and start to make others at least evangelize the message so that others now buy into it and also agree that this needs to be addressed and we need to behave properly. And if that evangelizing can happen in such a way that the numbers grow naturally or organically, then it brings on a situation where capital injection may not be needed. And that's the break even point that the client would like to reach. They may not reach it with one episode or one medium, but if a concerted effort using different mediums was applied to the problem as a solution to large numbers in a way that is, you can say, scaled, then with natural growth at some point, the break even will be hit where now the whole thing gathers its own momentum and people are themselves driving the message. That's the goal, ultimately, long term. So in the beginning, they're willing to inject their money to get the project going. And we have to show them that we're on a trajectory towards not only transformational change, but breaking even in a way that the project will grow on its own organically. We have to show them this. So there's an element of research and testing that has to be done at different phases of the work. For example, if we have ideas, the kind of ideas the client would want are ideas they can test. So if we make assumptions, for example, this is the set of characters that would be the antagonist, and these would be the protagonists. They would want us to be objective about saying that, not subjective or opinionated. And then beyond that, they would want us to test any assumption that we make in a way that can show the extent to which we are impacting on the transformation. So there are two things. One is to test how much we bring about transformative change, which means the behavior is changing. For example, we make advocates of Generation Z in such a way that they own the message and they want to change people by evangelizing. So we have to test that. That's transformative. But also, we need to test the extent to which they're educated on exactly what is the message. And in this case, the message is to do with littering in general, but it's about environmental preservation. And the client wants us to see it. You see, littering is a negative way of looking at life, actually, or even at looking at the work that we're doing. We're not trying to prevent littering, we're trying to preserve our environment. So they want us to see this not as a dystopia, but as an ecotopia, where we imagine a perfect environment, a perfect world, where we are living in harmony with the environment. And the idea is to plant that seed of the positive seed in people's minds that we can get towards this Garden of Eden where we live harmoniously with nature. And it's beneficial, it's good, and that's actually the definition of a good life and a good world. That's the ecotopia they want us to plant. So they're looking at it positively. And the definition of the problem, as you might imagine, is negative. That's the dystopia. So we've constructed the story, and you're familiar with the initial story, where we and I'll take us through it, but we just in summary, we are planting people in a futuristic Nairobi or suburb of a city in Kenya, where they are in a garbage heap or garbage dump, and that's where their lives are lived. And the livelihood of these people is that of chokoras, because they're in a garbage heap and they live off the garbage. So there are people who are comfortable with it. There are those who are profiting from it. There are those who run it, like they have their own rules. And then there are those who don't like it. So there's a kind of mix in there. However, it's very chaotic and it's not directional. It doesn't, it's in some ways, we need to portray it as not self sustaining because there's no purpose about life in a way that is improving on the outcomes. People who are even profiting from it are just making the garbage, making the problem worse. They're profiting off the problem. So their alignment to life is at cross purposes. They're compounding or increasing the problem and at the same time improving on their livelihoods. But what it effectively means is that they're killing people, killing the ecosystem for life and profiting from doing that. So that's quite a dangerous position if you think of it, writ large. So I'll share my screen and now explain it from the project perspective so that we can understand exactly what the problem statement is in line with the solution. And we've got to constructively align the solution with the problem in a way that is targeted so that the client achieves their mission of getting the message to the audience. And the message, as I said, is two-pronged. We need to get the education and the transformation to happen. To some extent, we may not be perfect, but we just need to be somewhere in the neighborhood. Okay, so let me again just, I think a good place to start might be with the material, which you're familiar with. I'll just open up some of the stuff that we had worked on and has been worked on since we last were together so that you can see what it is or where it is we have gone or how far we've come. The client has given us a brief which I've summarized. The brief essentially outlines the message to educate and to transform society, and they've defined the scope of work. It's to use littering as the problem. But littering is really the degradation of the environment. So anything to do with waste management, or you could say pollution of the environment at the livelihood level, not at the industrial level, at just ordinary people's lives. Things to do with those kind of things is what the client is really focused on. So when you see waste management, we're looking at garbage disposal methods. We're looking at ways of cleaning up, let's say, the environment within which we live, our neighborhoods. And then on the activism side, educating others on the benefits of doing all this. So those kind of messages are the ones we're looking at. Now, here is the client brief. And this client brief, which I'm showing you, has been put online. It's on these Google Drive folders. Okay? It's a folder called Ecotales. You can access it from this link. This page is a web page that we're using to manage the project. So everything here that's highlighted by links, you can see these links, will show you what you need to see. For example, you can see here we have the ideation folder and we have this brief. This brief has an icon of a file, which means if you click on this, it's available as a file online and you can see the brief. I'm just opening it for you to see here. This is the one that I had opened, and you can go through it and you'll see the client's brief based on how the client sees things. But in this case, this one that I've put up is the interpretation of the brief. Why the interpretation matters more to us is partly because the interpretation converts the brief into something that can be translated into work. The brief is not worded in a way that can be animated or in a way that we can make a comic. But the interpretation of the brief is. So, what is the interpretation of the brief? It's just really three things. All right? It's the problem, the solution, and the target audience. So, to be succinct, the target audience is Generation Z, primary audience. The secondary audience is Generation Alpha. The problem statement, to be succinct, is to educate and to transform behavior. So, to educate the target audience and to transform their behavior to make them activists or advocates of, you can say, environmental preservation. Okay, that's the problem. You could say, in many ways, the solution is to use a transmedia approach to do this, to educate and to transform them. Now, the challenge is in that, but at least the transmedia explanation of the solution is a call to action for us, because we can break down the different media that we're working with, and then we can map out the processes and the tools and the platforms that we work with. So based on how we had discussed, the major, or let's say the main vehicle carrying the main message is the animation. So we'll produce an animation which will be, you can say, distributed on digital media. TikTok is the kind of thing they're thinking of. So social media driven by TikTok, Instagram, and similar environments. Even YouTube is in play. But they're looking at numbers, and numbers where Generation Z is active. So distributing animation productions on those mediums is interesting to them. All right. The animation typically is 13 minutes. So it's an animation short. And the goal is to educate and to, you can say, get them to engage. Okay. Now, to a certain extent, the animation can, depending on how they receive it, can do that. It can excite young people to feel that they have to do something about it. It can also educate them on what needs to be done. But the question of sufficiency is the next one. Is it enough to educate them, for example, on exactly what needs to be done? Because what needs to be done in some cases is quite precise. It's driven by steps, which makes it technical. So how do you pass on those technical steps so that they understand exactly what needs to be done? So the animation plays a part. However, the second media is the comic. And the comic is online. It's not a print production. It's not a book or a comic book. It's an online comic which is interactive on one hand, and then it has its editions. The initial edition might be the launch edition, but we're producing a series. And the series of the comic maps onto the series of the animation. The animation will be a mini series, 7 episodes, made up of 3 limited series. The first limited series will be 3 episodes. It's called Guardians of Garbage. This is part of the solution. The second mini series would be 2 episodes, and not mini series. The second limited series would be 2 episodes, and the third limited series would be 2 episodes. So you can say the limited series together, the 3 of them, make up the mini series, which is 7 episodes. And that would technically end season 1, unless we expand on the season and we say, okay, we'll go up to 13 episodes for season 1, which means it's made up of 2 mini-series. But for now, the plan is just to do it that way. Then we can revisit and see the impact and see whether we can make a case to do the second season of Ecotales. But it's not really called Ecotales. It's called A Journey for a Better Tomorrow. This is the working name we're using. So let me show you. Here, we have the synopsis and the story. If I click on this, it'll open up the web page. Each one of these links is comprised of a web page and also of folders. These are working folders. If you click on the folder icon, it opens up the folder. So here's the web page. I'm just showing you that first, and then I'll show you the folders. So this is the document that you want, which is actually the synopsis and the narrative. So it's all here. That's the synopsis, and then it's followed by story down here. Struggle for change. Okay, so struggle for change is episode 1. That's episode 1 of the limited series, Guardians of Garbage. Of the mini series, I don't even remember the mini series name. It could be Journey for a Better Tomorrow, but that's the overall name for the whole production. So the mini series season 1 is A Journey for a Better Tomorrow, and it's made up of, you can say, 3 limited series. Guardians of Garbage being the first one, 3 episodes, and episode 1 of this is what I'm showing you now, which is the Struggle for Change. So Struggle for Change has 3 acts. Act 1 is Order Beneath the Trash. Act 2 is Echoes of the Ants. And Act 3 is Shadow of the Hidden Truth. The client had trouble with this name, but we'll discuss the client's troubles in a minute, not now. So these 3 acts make up the first episode, Struggle for Change. And Struggle for Change is episode 1 of the limited series, which has 3 episodes. And the limited series is Guardians of Garbage. And Guardians of Garbage, which is the first of the limited series making up the mini-series, the mini-series is Journey for a Better Tomorrow. So that's the chain. It's good to understand the structure so that we know exactly, and this is the main vehicle that we're using to deliver the message. It's good to understand the structure of the main vehicle. Okay? Now, I'll get into this one in a minute, but I just wanted to say that you can open it from this page here. The link, I'll share with you this link again, but it's on the group, the WhatsApp group. It opens up this page. Now, this page it has many entries. In total, it has actually up to 30 of these different links, but not all of them are enabled just yet. They're being enabled step by step. And where we've reached is the brief, the synopsis, and the story. This one here is the script in English. So if you see, it has 2 parts. It has the highlighted part, which is the script itself. So if I click on this, it'll open up the script here. This one. It's opening now. This is the editable copy where we can edit it. Because we're working on it, we're allowing you to write comments into this. This is the way to work on this, is to actually edit it by way of comments. And the writer will come in and apply the comments in a way that is consistent and balanced so that the story doesn't lose its thrust. So we're not encouraging people to edit it directly. And if you edit, don't edit it without going into editing mode. The idea is to go into editing mode and then put comments on the side. And this is Google Docs. So I think we're all familiar with Google Docs, I think. Editing is right here. If you're suggesting, is comments. So come here and click on suggesting. And then you can come in and make your suggestions as comments. Okay? So if you want to make a suggestion here, you can make them on the side as well. My internet is slow. Yeah, here. So now I can type in my suggestion here. Yeah, I can make a suggestion here. So I've typed in something right here where I'm suggesting something should go, and then I can make a comment on that over here. If I want to make another suggestion on something, I can highlight it like this, and then come to the side It's here, and select plus, and now I can make my suggestion right here. Okay. So I've selected this, and now I can make my comment here on that. Then I say comment. So that's how to do it. That's how to edit this script. Just highlight and comment on the side. And the writer will read that and, of course, raise a question or even respond to it. And you can comment on the whole document. That's the whole idea. The idea is to comment on the whole document. The client's going to read this as well. We've shared it with them in its current state. I'm deleting this comment. Yeah. So they're weighing in on it. They've made they've given us some feedback on the script. And this has the three acts. The first one is order beneath the trash. They've given us the feedback. One of the things they've said, because they're a trust and they're a Hindu trust, they don't want to antagonize the government. And because of the recent Mandamano with Generation Z and the government, they feel that the story potentially will antagonize the government. It'll make it look like they're supporting the Generation Z in terms of the Mandamano. They don't want that. We need to separate the idea that the generation is trying to bring about this attitudinal change amongst themselves, and that's what this production is doing, separate from the government. Now, in truth, the government's part of the problem by not being part of the solution. In other words, our education curriculum doesn't support any education on values that will talk about the holistic way in which we should live within our environment. That's missing in our curriculum. So the government then becomes part of the problem because they could solve it by including it in the curriculum. However, they're not in our target audience. Our target audience is direct with this production. It's Generation Z, not government officials. We're not trying to change policy. We're trying to influence Generation Z to make them change on the ground. So, in many ways, they are nervous about references to authority. And this story, in the way it's written right now, talks about the authorities being Kanjo. And Kanjo are actually benefiting from the garbage dump. They run a kind of cartel. And for you to operate there, you pay them. But this is all chini ya maji. You're paying them under the table because they know that shops and even other people who are even robbers are all benefiting from this garbage heap in the village, in the suburbs of the city. So they want something from that. So they want kickback. So we're changing all that. We now want it not to be Kanjo. We just want it to be some cartel, but not necessarily government or county level cartel. It's a cartel of, you can say, bad people who are trying to profit from this kind of degradation of the environment. Okay? So that's what this story is about. Now, this is the key, and it's the crux because in all these things, and this is part of what I want to show you right here. I think I opened the synopsis here. I will mention that you see on this document here, this one, there's this folder, the yellow one. If you click on the yellow one, it opens the Google Drive folder. So then you see everything. And sometimes this is what you want. So it's got all these folders, like the ideation, the reproduction. So you can see these, and then go there, and you can access what you need to access. So right now we're on the brief, this one, and it's important to understand the brief because the brief is the solution. Yeah, I don't have the client's brief. Script story, maybe it's in one of these, but we were looking at the script here. Okay, so let me go back. I'll go to the story, this one, okay, which is the solution. The solution is this story, and this is the main solution. So because it controls the animation. So this is based on the brief, which I had showed earlier. I think the brief is open here, this one. This one describes what the client really wants from our perspective. So the interpretation, the aim, the objective, and the outcomes. It's good to read it and know it, just because we're in production for like a whole series. So it's for many years. It's good to know that that will not change. Then we come now to the synopsis. And the synopsis, and I want to explain this. The synopsis is two things in one. It's the client's message and our device that's carrying the message. It's two things in one. Our device that's carrying the message is the story. The client's message is education and transformation. That's the client's message. So both are inside this synopsis. And that's very important to understand because that's why we write the synopsis. We don't write the synopsis to tell the story per se. We don't also write the synopsis to tell the message. We write the synopsis to show you how the story will carry the message, how the device will deliver the message. That's really what the synopsis is trying to do. Okay? So we write the story in summary, of course, and in there is the message being delivered. So in this case, I'll just summarize what it's talking about. In this case, we introduce the protagonist and antagonist. We have three children, not children, but Generation Z adults, young adults. The youngest might be 18, Kolo. We introduced Joro, his older brother, about 20, and then his older sister, who is Shiro. She's around 22. So we introduced the three, okay? And we show them to be associated with the solution. Now, because the problem is littering, and that behavior around it, the solution becomes education and transformation of behavior in terms of advocacy, that you become an owner of the message and you try to evangelize and bring about change in people around you. So these two things, transformation of behavior is that one, and the education in understanding the solution. The idea is to understand the solution, but of course, the solution is constructively aligned to the problem. Okay, so that's brought out here. We need to bring it out at least so that it's understood that the story is trying to provide a solution that educates and transforms behavior in this evangelical way around environment preservation. Okay, the heroes are the three children, you can say young adults, and the antagonist now. Who is the antagonist? So the antagonist is literally everybody else, literally, including the society as a group. You can say the neighbors, for example. They represent the antagonists, but at different levels. Those who profit from the garbage heap, those are antagonists. There are those who profit from it, but they're not really bad people. They're just people who are uneducated. So they don't know. They think that it's a good thing because they're profiting. So they don't know, or they don't know better. There are those who know and intentionally do what they're doing. And then there are those who are complicit. They just know it's a problem, but they sit on the fence. So they're all antagonists. But every episode deals with one antagonist at a time. Now, episode one uniquely introduces what I've just said to the audience and now starts to tackle it. So, where is the solution going to come from? These are young people who are not necessarily, they're like part of the environment. They also don't know what the solution is, and they may not fully understand the problem. Because, for example, Kolo finds that the garbage heap is good fun. It's great fun. He enjoys it. He's the youngest. His brother finds the garbage heap is interesting because it's got many interesting things about it. His sister, who's older, the eldest, she has a fear of the garbage dump. And she has seen this environment without the garbage dump, I think when she was much younger, but she kind of knows it can be different and she finds it to be a scary thing. Just dangerous, unhealthy, all the bad things. So they have different perspectives, but those perspectives are supposed to be representative of Generation Z. That's what we're saying. Yeah, I think someone's coming in. Let me let him in. Yeah, so welcome. I can see you've joined us for games. Is that Gideon or Timothy?
Yeah,
Gideon. Okay. So I was just trying to.
yeah, it's Gideon.
Okay, I was just trying to bring David up to speed what we did last week,
Hello?
so he understands where we are. Can you hear me, Gideon? You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Am I faint or loud enough?
Hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just wrap it up. We're kind of wrapping up, but I want to just say that this story
Okay.
has now been cast in stone by the client. They've approved it. This is what we discussed last time, and it's got a slightly different. It's more structured, and you understand it because you were in the meeting last time. And it's the main carrier of the story is the animation, and the animation is what I've gone through. This is the story, or at least this is the synopsis. The story is right here in this in the or after this synopsis comes now the story. The story is called Struggle for Change. That's episode one. It has three acts. Act one is the order beneath the trash. Act two is echoes of the ants, and act three is shadows in the hidden truth. The client doesn't like this name because that idea that there's a hidden truth um, sounds it just made them uncomfortable. So there is some discomfort they have with mentioning authority, like county authority. So we've moved away from that. And they expressed some concern about this title. So I'm not sure they didn't explain why they were concerned, but they are not trying to aggravate audiences. Even in as much as there are things here that are disturbing, they don't want to target, let's say, county workers or policemen and then make them bad people. No, they don't want to get into that. So they're looking at terminologies and they want us to, as much as possible, avoid targeting other audiences and aggravating them. But I don't know yet what was the issue around shadows of the hidden truth. Okay, so this gives you a sense of the structure as it's unfolding. Now, what we need to do as a group, I can move on to that, is to this can change, by the way, with ideas that you may have. You can come in with ideas, but the place to put energy more is more on the story script. The script here it has been written in a filmic way. This is a film script, and it's a full script for 13 minutes. Act one, two, and three are here based on this story, which is a summary. This story is a summary, and this script is the one we're now storyboarding. We have thumbnails. The thumbnails for the storyboard are here. You can see here it says storyboard thumbnails. Um, these are not highlighted, but I think the folder is highlighted. So if you click on this folder, it opens up um, the thumbnails. I'm just opening them to show you here. Yeah. And when you double click on these thumbnails, it opens up online. And you can comment on these thumbnails using sticky notes. That's how you do it. It's very easy to use once you open it up. You'll see. And make the comments so that we can make we are reading them ourselves, you see, amongst ourselves. We're all part of the contributing to the story. Okay, so I see this hasn't been put here by Purity. I'm going to ask her to put them so that we have them. And that way, the link is bringing us to the thumbnails folder, but she's not yet done it. I'll ask her to do it. But she's completed the thumbnails for Act 1, 2, and 3. And all we need is just the access so that we can comment on what she's doing. What she's doing now is the main storyboard. If I come out of the thumbnails, I can click here to come out of them. I'm just now within the Google Drive folder. It's just slow internet. But if I were on the page here, this one, or is it here? Yeah. You can use that one web page to navigate everything. Yeah. But some people like to navigate folders just slow, but so yeah, they'll open eventually. Um, this is the brief interpretation. This is the story synopsis, and this is the story folder. So if you want to see the folder, you can also come here and see it. The root folder always has the latest version, but there'll be subfolders because the moment clients make changes, then we open up a subfolder here, and this stuff will go into the subfolder, and the latest version will stay on the root. So always the latest versions on the root. That's how we're working, so that we maintain that as part of the way of doing things. But the versions will be managed by V1 like this. So you'll know version 1, 2, 3, but the latest one will not have a version. It will always be the same name, base name, without a version on it. But when you look at older versions, you'll see version 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll build up like that. Yeah. All right, so where we are is on this script. The script has been received by the client. We're waiting for feedback from the client. And Act 3, the writer, who's Nicholas, said that Act 3, he still has a problem with it. Because one of the things about Act 3 is that it needs to end with either a cliffhanger or something that makes people want to look forward to the next episode, something like that. So we have to have some oversight. What is the next episode? And then what is the cliffhanger that's going to want us to watch the next one? So how are we handling that? Or do we not want to have a cliffhanger? But either way, we've got to connect them. They're independent. Each episode is independent, but it's part of a mini limited series. So there has to be something that makes people want to watch the next one, even though it's complete on its own. All right, so that's the challenge he has for episode 3. I mean, for scene, it's Act 3. And we can weigh in on that. And I had explained using editing on the side here that we can come to editing here and edit anything that we want to edit here. Just select and then click the plus sign and add a comment. And we can comment on things that we want all over this document. I'd encourage that because the input of all of us matters. And I think we get a better product when we all participate in this kind of way. Okay, so I think that's clear. Let me move on then. Beyond the script comes the storyboard. We've looked at the thumbnails, but there is a storyboard itself, and she's done Act 1. I think she presented it last time, and it's inside this folder, so you'll see it here. Yeah, there are 3 levels of the storyboard. The thumbnails is one. She's obviously updating them, but she's not yet done that. But the sketches that she's doing now are the next level. She's using Storyboarder, the software, to do the sketches. So what's the difference? The thumbnails try to implement the big idea, the thumbnails. And the big idea is really trying to carry the message. So it's not focused on side stories or things like those. It's just trying to build up the story visually in a way that carries the big idea. Okay? So those are small, quick sketches. A thumbnail takes like minutes to draw maximum. So that's what this is. And she's got, I saw something in there. So she's got them in here. Let me quickly show you. I think if the internet allows, then I can just show you. But the sketches, the storyboard sketches coming out of Storyboarder, now assume that the big idea is working. It's approved. We're all in agreement with it. Now it's looking at shots. So it implements the shot list. And the storyboard actually carries the shot list in an animation. And what we mean by that is that the camera angles, what the camera is doing, how it's doing it, is captured on the storyboard. And it's even described. So either it's a wide-angled long shot and we're zooming in, or it's an over-the-shoulder shot and we're, let's say, zooming out. It could be a medium shot and we're panning up, down. You see, it's implementing what the camera is doing. That's what the storyboard is doing, the sketches. So the big idea has been sorted out on the thumbnails, and now we come to the sketches where we implement the shortlist. She was supposed to present that today. She's not here, so we can't have that. She says she has no power. So that's fine. She'll put it inside the sketches. And then once that's approved, that will go to the client. And there's usually a back and forth on the storyboard, and it can go up to 10 rounds, 10 versions, but it's okay. It'll go back and forth, and when that's done, then we move to the artworks of the storyboard. Now, the artworks of the storyboard tries to explore the feeling, let's say the look of the animation and how it will be treated. It tries to explore. So it works a little bit with texture, sometimes with color, not always, and backgrounds. So we get a sense of the backgrounds more and the kind of light treatment, the lighting of the scenes. Okay, what does that mean? That means that to some extent the Background is not passive, it's part of the narrative. And the same thing with the lighting, it's part of the narrative. So those narratives are being brought in the artworks over here. But again, these storyboard drawings are not artistic as such. They're doing exactly what I'm trying to tell you. It's like the artworks, which are the final level of them, are focused on trying to tell the story using lighting and shadows. And it's also introducing a background. So if you consider that it's building up on sketches, which was just looking at shots, those are what the camera is doing, different angles and different movements. And then building up on thumbnails. Thumbnails are implementing the message. You see, all these are not artistic statements. They're all more of design rather than art. So we shouldn't mistake the storyboard to be an artistic output. It's not. If you're an artist, it just added value because you can draw interesting drawings then, you see, maybe more closer to the characters that we really want. Maybe you can do that. But that's not really the thing. You can also use statement. The best animators were not artists. Disney could not draw, but it was the best at telling stories and writing storyboards. So you can draw stickmen like Disney, and you'll be fine. But if you can also sketch, I mean, of course, Disney company works with people who can sketch, and then they guide them on exactly what to do. So if you can sketch, that's great. So she's doing the this one, and when she does it, she'll present it, and then we can also help her with the last one over here. That's where we are now. Okay. However, today I want us to introduce. I mean, this week. This is the work for this week. I want us to now move beyond that and design the characters. So characters are number one up here. And this is important because in a transmedia project, which is led by the animation, we need the characters as the things we carry across the medias. So if we have Kolo, he's 18, we have Njoro, 20, and we have Shiro, 22 or 23. So we have those as the heroes. They'll be also the same characters featuring as heroes in the comic. And they'll also be the same characters featuring as heroes in the social media activation. So those are the three platforms that this is going on. TikTok will host the activation, but YouTube, for example, will host the animation best, I think, because YouTube has the biggest reach for these kind of things. But essentially, the distribution channels are through social media. Okay. Now, the comic is a website. It's a website, and it's like a comic, like a physical comic. It's just that it's more interactive. So we have to decide on the interaction. Now, one of the things that the client asked is, what's the difference then? What does the comic do that the animation doesn't do? Well, the comic gives a different perspective from a narrative perspective. It gives a different dimension. And this is the thing. What is the big idea from the solutions point of view? The big idea is that these young people are learning from nature how to manage the environment. And managing the environment means not, being educated on not polluting and preserving the environment. That's what we mean. But they're learning it from nature. They're not learning it from human beings. So what we've crafted, for example, in this episode, is a situation where Kolo and Joro are playing football, and then the ball is kicked by the many safarians. And Kolo, who is the youngest, goes after the ball and he falls down and he starts watching the ants. And the ants he notices are talking to him, or they are at least doing something. They're behaving in a very organized way. And that organized way in which they're behaving is organizing garbage, organizing the food that's part of the garbage dump. These guys live in a garbage dump. So there's a lot of food, a lot of littering going on. The ants are organizing it. And they're organizing it by putting it into bins, different colored bins. That's what they're doing. And they're doing it in a very organized way, which is a revelation for the young man. I mean, but he doesn't notice it himself. He notices something, but he talks about it, invites his brother, who is Joro. Joro is the guy who connects with Mother Nature. He's the kind of guy who is more introvert, much more reflective. So when he comes to his brother and then he starts seeing the ants, he hears what they are saying and he can talk to the ants. So Joro knows how to communicate with Mother Nature. Kolo likes having fun, so he's just enjoying himself. He's like he likes to pull. He's a prankster. He likes to pull pranks. So in all that, he misses the opportunity to talk to the ants or to see what they're doing. But Joro, who is reflective, is talking to them and understanding them, and they're talking to him as well. So that's how they learn. And we've crafted the story in a way that they learn how to organize garbage into colored bins from the ants. How you have to take your plastics and put them into the blue bin. You take your organic stuff and put it into the yellow bin. And you put your other things like glasses and hard things into the red bin. You know, that kind of thing. They learn that from the ants. But it's a new thing. People who live in the neighborhood don't do that. That's a cultural shift. They don't do that. So um, the, the way we want it to come out is that the ants are so persuasive in the way they convince Kolo and Joro that they are fired up to go and tell their sister. And when they go and tell their sister, she dismisses them. She just thinks that this dump is not a good place and you guys should not do what you're doing, talking to ants. So there's a section of Act 1 where they're trying to persuade the sister. And then it gets into Act 2. And the dad comes home and he's like, he's also working in the dump. He's like a chokora in some ways, but he has a way of doing business with it. So he expects them to also do it. But he finds that they're not. They're actually talking to him about something else. They're talking about how to manage the garbage and to manage the waste. And they explain to him why it's a problem. You see, because they learned these from the ants. So it sounds like these guys are mad because they're talking about this kind of thing. So that's what's going on. Now, when we go to the comic book, it's called, but we haven't given it a name. But whatever name we give it, we'll have the appendage Ant's Eye View. Because the comic is speaking and looking at things from Mother Nature's perspective. And that's the difference we're telling the client. That Mother Nature has a perspective which we want to capture in the comic, and therefore it's important. Whereas when you look at the animation, it's from the human perspective. So we have the problem and we're trying to solve it, but we're looking at it from how we look at things. But when we're in the other side, the comic, now we have to craft the comic from the ant's perspective. And we call it Ant's Eye View because of that. Now, episode 2 may not feature ants, it may feature birds, it may feature different animals or different um, um, parts of nature. It might be underwater. But whatever it is, we're learning from Mother Nature again. So we have to figure it out. But for now, it's ants, and the ants are in the garbage dump, and they're helping to order things and showing the humans how to arrange garbage. And they're telling humans that it's beneficial. So that's what the story is about. Now, it's a struggle for change because people don't want to change and people think this is a bad message or it's a non message. So there's a bit of struggle. We have to build attention to an extent that when they convince their immediate family, for example, when the two boys convince their sister, then the three children convince their father, that is a breakthrough. But there are other humans in the community, like the cartel, who are trying to run the garbage as a garbage dump. Those guys are around and they're introduced in this episode. And they come and they notice that there's some resistance from this family. So that is seen as something that should be stopped. So they are coming in as protagonists big time. So that's how the story is unfolding. But really, the focus is on trying to change people's, first of all, trying to educate people on the benefits of organizing your garbage into these bins, and then trying to get people fired up so that they feel that they should make others also do the same thing. Okay? So the comic will play its part using the ants perspective. We need to maintain the message. And then when we go into social media with the memes, we need to structure them in such a way that, because they're interactive, in such a way that will interest people long enough to, first of all, to share them, but also to talk about them and to talk about them in an evangelical way, almost like they've been delivered by the message and now they want to pass it on. That kind of thinking. That's how we want the social media to sort of make it something that goes viral because people are engaging with it and they're engaging with the message and they're feeling this message is so important that they have to talk about it and to pass it on. That kind of thinking is what we want. Okay, so we have yet to get to it, but if we form the main vehicle, which is the comic, I mean the animation, then we can use it to pivot onto the comic and then pivot onto the activation for social media. Okay, so the thing I want us to do for this week is to do with character design here, this one. Now, there's several things, and this is important what I'm about to say. because of the way the world is going. Right now, as we speak, the animation production line is being affected by AI tools, which have now come in a strong way. And I want us to see how we're going to use them. So I'll be telling you some things. But feel free because the AI tools are many and they're coming onto the scene exponentially. The number of AI tools that have come into, let's say, the animation production pipeline last month alone are like, I would say 10, maybe even 20 times more than what was there before, just the previous month. There's so many, and I see them in this YouTube advertising and all that. But there's so many when I check them out and I go through them that it's never been like that before because software takes time to develop. But now with AI developing itself and people using AI to develop, it's happening quicker. So there are some things that we're going to experiment with AI, which I think some of them can help us. However, before we can get to that, we're using AI instrumentally. So we need to visualize our characters. You had done some characters, which were good, but I want us to install Poser. Poser is by DAZ, D-A-Z. Install it, and we're going to use character libraries from Poser because it'll help us with the animation. And we will use them to draw our character by tracing on top of those characters. So if you can install Poser, see how it works. It's very straightforward. Poser is just posing software, but it allows you to animate using it. But the main reason we want it is for the wardrobe. We want the wardrobe and the poses. Okay. Once we have that, we're good. We'll use other animation software, but let's install it and get the three characters for the protagonists. Get if you read the script, you'll see that there's a cartel guy and he has a crony. So there are two people there who are antagonists. There's a father who is resisting also the message. So we need those characters. They're like you could say three antagonists. The father being one because he's representing the old school, and then the two cartel people, and they have others they're working with, but those are background people. So these three protagonists and the three heroes, we need to get these characters. All right, particularly the heroes. And I'd like us to make them poser characters for now, and then I'll show you how we're going to treat them so that they become unique. They'll be helpful in the animation process, help us to go quicker, and we can leverage the AI to help us again to animate quickly. Okay, so that's this week. Installing Poser, identifying characters using Poser libraries and Poser characters. There are many free ones. And once we've done that, you present them next week. Present your version of Kolo, Joro, Shiro, their father, and the two cartel people from the script who are now troublemakers. I mean, they see these people as troublemakers, but those guys are dangerous. All right, that's the exercise for this week. But go through this folder. I needed you to weigh in on what I was calling the boards. And let me see if I can open it up. Yeah, so here, now it's showing the mood boards, Act 1. You just click on it. It will open up the mood board. It's now open. Go in there and put in your mood boards for the scenes. So how animation works is that we have a feeling that is in the look, and we want to capture it. You might have seen it somewhere, maybe in another movie or in some website, or maybe you have a photo. All these can contribute to the mood board, as long as it captures the mood for the scene. You just need to, if we click on this one, let me click on one. You just need to go in and specify by writing there that this image, you see, is Act 1, Scene 1. And then you put the image. So this one someone has put, just taking long to come. And this whole document is dedicated to that. Okay? So this is just someone's opinion. They feel this is something they can explain as a mood. Here's another one. So these mood boards are clearly, these could be reference boards, but they're trying to capture the emotional appeal of Act 1, Scene 1. To give you a sense of how it is. It's just a dangerous place, unsafe, unhealthy. You can understand the fear now of Shiro. But we don't have mood boards for Act 1, Scene 2 and Act 1, Scene 3. So these things, if you read the script, you'll see. And then here, Act 2, same thing. You click here, It opens up the mood board for that, and then you can go ahead and add in your ideas for this. This is the work we are supposed to do by this week. There's also Act 3, same thing. And then we have reference boards. Reference boards are shots, angles. Like, are we having ant eye views, bird's eye views? Are we having extreme close-ups? It's also to do with style. What is the symbolic style? Are we using, maybe you saw a style you feel can work for this. We can put it here as a reference board. So the mood board is all about emotional appeal. The reference board is about the shots and how you tell the story using the shots. But it's not the actual story. It's just interesting shots that could lend themselves and inform the story. That's what it is. Even the mood board is just interesting shots that would inform the treatment. Okay? But it's good to discuss such things also with the client sometimes, because the client doesn't have the mind of understanding what we're doing. But when we discuss something like a mood board or a reference board, they understand it a lot more better because it's visual. There's a short list here. We don't need this short list. In animation projects, we don't, because the short list is actually the storyboard. It's ingrained in the storyboard. But this was developed by Purity, so I just kept it here. It's fine. It's coming off the storyboard she's done, these ones. But we don't, this is something filmmakers do, but we don't usually develop separate shortlists. They'll double our work for nothing. What happens is that the storyboard is sufficient, and once it's done, we can make the comments directly on the storyboard. Okay, so if you understand that this is how you will be working, we'll be using this web page to orientate ourselves, then you're good. But I've given you the folders here on the side, so you can go to the folders as well and put things into the folder. For this week, I'd like to highlight, you see, character designs is not highlighted. But if you've done your character designs and you've put them in, I will highlight this so that we can go to that folder automatically. Maybe I'll just do it after this lesson so that we go there, and then we can now add our things, our characters. But I'd like them to be poser characters. I'd like you to render them out of poser and then present them. We need a front view, a 3/4 view, and a side view. That's all. But we also need poses actually, and poser is strong on poses. So if you can get some poses of the character, 3 is enough, of their main character traits. Like Kolo likes looking, and he's a prankster, so he likes fooling around. Get 3 poses that will represent that. Joro is reflective. He talks to Mother Nature. Give us 3 poses to represent his character type. Shiro is responsible. She's taken over from her mother, and she's scared of this dump. So give us poses for Shiro like that. So 3 poses, and then 3 models: front, 3/4, and side view. That's enough to at least present these characters as character designs. If we can have that next week, it's good because I can share that again directly with the client. Okay, if you have questions on this, feel free. You can talk to me about it and we can discuss. If there's anything unclear, I'll take questions on that.
I wanted to ask if for the characters we're going to, or by next week, should we have like modeled them or just concept art and stuff like that?
No, selected them using poser sheets. Remember, you had done some sketches, so those were good enough guides. At least we have a rough indication. But now what we want to do is to get 3D equivalents, because the 3D is going to help us to provide a reference when we're drawing for different poses. So we want to get the look and shape of our characters. When I say the look, is because it's not really, it's the shape that we're interested in the pose. But when we are drawing it, that's when we get the exact look, when we're drawing it. But we need a reference, and the reference will help us go quickly in terms of animation. So let's use poser to get the reference. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you can render them out, because you're making a presentation, we're still designers. So we need to, once you've found the character, you frame them. This is the front view, the way I'm sitting. The 3/4 view is like a view like so, 3/4, see? And then the side view is a complete side view. It's almost like you would do if you were going to prison, you're being arrested, like that, but with the whole body, okay? So that's not posing. Those are character profiles. But the pose sheets now capture their character. Like now, if we're saying that, let's say Njoro is a reflective guy. Maybe he has a pose that is like this. Maybe, because he thinks a lot, so he's like this for some reason. You see, so that's his pose. If Joro, I mean, Kolo is a prankster and he's young. So maybe he's very energetic and he has very energetic looking poses. Maybe, you see. So, but it's up to you. Just your own concept of how you feel this character should pose. And you capture that. Then you render it and then let's see. I'll also install Poser. I've not installed it yet. I'll install it and I'll check out the free library material as well, so that I'll also present ideas next week. Let's all present and then we discuss. So that will be a very important step because that is shareable with the client. Now, on the client, this is a paid job, so it's something that we're doing, and hopefully we'll have legs enough to go the full series that we want to do. So it's good for portfolio, it's good for learning, but it's also very good because it pays. So I want to talk to the client next week on the payment issues. The client had traveled, they came back this week. I'm trying to get the meeting now. But when I meet them, they'll want me to show them what we have. Clients in today's animation world want to pay for work that is done. In the previous world, like in the 90s, clients will pay you 50% and you've done nothing. They'll just pay you, you go and start. That's what they will do. In today's world, they don't. Today, they want you to do something and then they will pay you. But we also need to be paid. So it's a catch 22. So we have to choose our clients carefully and we have to work with them in a very precise way that will make them or trigger them to pay. Right? So one of the things we do is that all this ideation stuff, I do that upfront so that I can share with the client and convince them that we're good for the job. Then they say, okay, let's invoice us, let's do a quote, give us an invoice, let's do a contract, and then we get into business. So my hope is we've already quoted to the client, we've already invoiced, no, we've not invoiced, we want to invoice the client. The client is sharing this with their inner committee. And once the client feels that it's a go ahead, like everyone agrees that this is something we should do and the price is acceptable, then now we do a contract. And sometimes it's an LPO. They just give us the contract saying, go ahead and produce A, B, C, D. And then we respond to that. But other clients, the way they work is that we have a formal contract that we sign against. So we'll see how this one goes. So I'm hopeful that next week the client will be ready to have those kind of discussions. So as they're saying all that, we can be ahead of them. And if we're ahead of them, then payment just comes quicker because they'll be seeing that there's something here we're paying against. This is a trust. The trust is answerable. They're Hindu trust, and they're answerable to their members of the mosque or whatever it is. And they are particular, they tell me, at least the way they talk, about making these payments, that they can't misuse money of their people. So when they pay, they're quite keen to pay to show evidence of what they're paying for. So all this stuff that I've shown you is with them as evidence on what they need to pay for. You see, that's how it goes. And I'm telling you all this because when I work with animators, like now you're young animators coming into the business, animators are never trained on how to manage money, how to manage a job, how to even connect your work to the money. Sometimes even I've been in situations where connecting your skills to the money is considered to be bad. It's not a good thing to connect your work to the money. It's like you're interested in money and you're not interested in work. But I don't think that's a good way of doing anything. You have to live. We all have to live. So you have to have a reasonable attitude towards the money making, the project management, and you can say the production. And the production is not about artworks. It's about what we've been talking about. Using ideas and stories and art to leverage them to provide a solution. That's really what this is. You're using your visual skills and narrative skills to provide a solution. And that's where the value is created. So it's about creation of value or creation of meaning. If you understand that and you're visually talented, you can draw, you can also tell stories visually, then you can use that as your currency to provide solutions and craft meaning. That's really what we're doing. So if you understand that, that's good because then we can have it's the monster is out of the bag. We can now just have the discussion openly about constructing of meaning, about the money. Because what I would then do once the client signs off, I'll give you contracts so that you know how much you're earning, from what you're doing. And I prefer performance contracts, again from experience, because people promise the earth in the beginning and deliver mud in the end. So we don't want that. It's never nice when it's like that. So I prefer when we agree, this is what you're supposed to do, it's how much it costs. If you do more, you get paid more. If you do less, you get paid less. It's all based on performance. And then it's raw safi, because if you do zero, then we understand you don't get paid, but you also know you don't get paid. But if you do 100%, you get fully paid according to how the contract was. So that allows us to be more, I think, practical about the production process. And I think we should be like that. I don't think artists should be artistic about this kind of exercise. It doesn't help. You end up getting stuck with it. Okay? So I'll be discussing
Okay.
it with you more in depth next week once I've talked to the client.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So, so my hope as well, by the way, because you guys are learning and you're still in a study environment. So I'd like if in this, what we learn here will help you with your project work. Yeah, I see David, you have raised your hand. Is it that you can't speak? Okay. Yeah, no worries. Do you have another question, Gidi? I think David doesn't speak, or he's not able to speak.
No, I don't have another question.
Okay.
But I read Act One and Act Two earlier today,
Okay.
and I'm seeing I forget his name, but there's someone who
Yeah.
asked me to do something about like something about the ending. I'm not sure if it's Act Four or like the ending of
Yeah.
one of the acts.
It's Act
Act
3.
Three.
Yeah.
Yeah, he helped me to
And
do
it's
something.
Nicholas.
Yeah,
No,
sorry.
his name is Nicholas. He's on the group. He's
Yeah.
asking you, yeah, to, well, what he's saying is that he wrote the story. So what has happened is that the client, not the client, it's just when we are problematizing. You see, what I told him is that the story is good, but the ending is not enough. It doesn't incentivize anyone to want to watch episode. So,
Okay.
yeah, you know what I'm saying. So we've got to end it in a way that's convincing, and people feel that, yeah, I have to watch episode 2,
Okay.
or
Okay.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay. I'll see what I'll do with that.
Okay. All right. But feel free, you can go into that and add on comments the way I was showing you using Google Docs. And that's very nice when we do that because you also own the story. And I think the stories that are owned by all of us are richer somehow because we all have different perspectives, different things we bring. And those are richer stories normally. So I like it when we all contribute. It'll be the same for everything. So Charity Purity is going to put up. She's put up the thumbnails, which I'll share with you. I'll tell you when they're working because I didn't see them. I'll ask her to put them up again. But those thumbnails showing the big idea, you can go in and alter the big idea. I mean, the big idea is how are these visuals achieving education and transformation within the audience that are going to watch this. That's really what those thumbnails are doing. So they just focus narrowly on the story I was telling you, where oh you meet ants and then ants talk to you. Oh, and then you learn from the ants and you learn what? This step, this step, this step, this step. Okay. So that's important in learning. So you know 5 steps. Now these 5 steps you have to retrain your own people. Who are your own people? Your sister, then your father, and then maybe neighbors, let's say neighbors. So you have to train them. Okay, so that's a distinct part of the story, and it's part of the big idea. Now, when you're trying to train them, there's resistance. It's coming from what? Number one, history. So the father is seeing, what are you doing? Talking to ants. Now you're coming. What's this? It's bad behavior. So you see, there's that kind of disaffection from the solution. And then the sister, who is scared, and whatever is causing her to be scared, she doesn't want this. Okay, so that's part of the problem, part of the enemy. Enemy number two are people who profit from this garbage heap, and they're asking you, what are you saying? You have a solution to sort out the garbage without us? No, don't sort out anything. Just leave it. That's what they're telling you because they're profiting from it. So you have to deal with them. So when you're trying to educate people, these people who are profiting from it are trying to stop you. When you're trying to deal with that, your own family members are saying, don't do what you're doing, stop. You see, tension. That's where the tension is coming. Um, so we need to capture people in the real context. Because even you, why do you throw banana peelings down and not in the garbage bin? Or your friend, why would your friend do that? You have eaten a banana, you can throw it in the bin is there, but you're throwing it down. Why? Because you're outside. Why don't you throw it in the bin? You see. So there's a behavior there we want to change. So we should capture it so that we can address it and say, no, there's something wrong. Why are you doing this? And see how to bring it in the attention so that people can also see. Either they see it to be a bad thing, or they see it to be a foolish thing, or they see it to be a funny thing. But that's you. You're laughing at yourself because you're doing it. So you see, that's how to look at this. And then episode one ends with this kind of thing. Once episode one, which is focused on garbage organization, is done, the client's going to test it and to see the impact it's having on Generation Z and whether we're targeted and on the money. You see? So that's why we need to be thinking like that. Okay? All right, guys. So I'm still open to questions. And if, David, you want to type, you can type. It's okay. Yeah, so that's the thing. Next week, I will start off with the presentation of those characters. And if Purity is ready with the storyboard, then now these are sketches. So they're much more detailed. She will make a presentation for about 15 minutes, I think, maybe less, maybe 10 minutes of that. So everyone will make a presentation. For us, it will be the characters. For Purity, it will be the storyboard. Nicholas will come. So, and all of us will weigh in on the reference board and the mood board, all of us. So we have something there we can discuss. Okay? So,
Yeah, that's okay.
okay, guys. So I'll end the meeting, but thanks for coming. I'll share this link so that I think Tim can see. He's not come for this meeting. The others can also see. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stop it now.